Welcome to the show, Ryan. So as the CMO of DocuPace, you're driving innovation in wealth management. And I've noticed you've received several industry recognitions, including finalist for CMO of the Year. So I'm really excited to dive into your journey. And can you tell me what brought you to DocuPace in the first place and why you were so excited about this opportunity?
Yeah, so I had been a user of DocuPace, or at least my companies that I worked for had been a user of DocuPace in the past. And our president of that company got an opportunity to lead DocuPace as its own CEO. And he was convincing enough that, or maybe, generous enough to allow me to come join him. And I've been here since late 2020.
And can you tell me a little bit about what's your philosophy for building effective marketing organizations?
So I have a very specific philosophy, is that think of the marketing department as the state department for the organization, meaning we have our own initiatives and our own priorities, but we really go out as ambassadors to the business, whether it's an internal partner or an external partner, and figure out exactly what is most important to them, how we can make them successful. And it's one of the things I like best about what we do here is that, and to tell my team this, is we get to go, take the best and brightest of all the work that other people around us do, and then go show it to the world. And I think that that's something special and unique to what, in the roles that we play.
So part of it is really highlighting your customers' achievements.
Yes. Highlighting our customers, highlighting our team members and work that's coming up.
For a lot of people are wondering, what's the best way, in your opinion, to approach marketing a more complex B2B product?
So that's an interesting question because our solution is very complex. And I think the first thing to learn, at least one of my first learnings when I got here, was don't try to sell the whole solution at once. If you try to sell or market or message everything that we do, the audience gets overwhelmed and they actually become paralyzed in terms of being able to take action. So trying to find peeling off the core messages that can connect. Then once they're actually in discovery phase and having a conversation, you can go and get further down into exactly what it is. But if I'm trying to sell the whole platter, it just makes people just gloss over it and it's too much. So I think that's something I would definitely recommend to others, is even if it's selling like a compliance tool or a regulatory piece or anything like that, is find the handful of messages that stand alone. They're powerful enough to stand alone, and then go forward with those.
And these are like entry point messages around, immediate problems instead of the entirety of the solution.
Yes. So for our case, we do a new account opening. One of the biggest pain points in the industry is rejections, what they call NIGOs to use industry jargon. But you can go all day just on that one particular thing because it's so universal and so rampant.
I've seen this as a particular challenge for very technical, SaaS founders, where it's difficult for them to separate, what's the entry immediate need versus, the whole solution that they put together. So,
and I think technology in general, and even sales teams, I say this, it's a sort of a general term, but they're drunk on features and starving for benefits, meaning they feature versus, okay, so how does that actually benefit me? How is that going to make my life better? And I think if you can flip that towards the benefit side, it actually makes for a much more impactful conversation with the prospect.
And it's strange. I find that it's more understandable. It's a great translation tool to actually talk in their point of view. How does it actually affect their life?
You're exactly right.
So how would you say that DocuPace marketing strategy has evolved since you joined?
Sure. So when I joined in 2020, the first thing we did was sort of tear everything down to the studs and let's figure out exactly what we want to build up from there. And so first thing we did is we did a rebrand to sort of modernize the look and feel of the company and sort of how we show up online. And then we started building email programs. So how do we have continual email programs come in? We've worked on our social. And one of the things that I think is important for us now is how to leverage digital advertising and digital engagement in the B2B space, which is a lot harder. You spend less money than you would in the B2C world, but it's also harder to really get a message out. Going back to the previous question about complexity, what do you find that one thing that people can actually grab somebody's attention and engage their interest when you're doing through a digital channel? It's much more harder game to play. And that's one of the things that we are exploring and have been exploring. And I don't think we've nailed it yet, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
The same problem you were talking about earlier, it's just that when you're leveraging your spend, it becomes really important that you're putting in the right message that's actually
right. I'm actually digging us in a hole, right? So if I'm digging us in a hole and we have to overcome that in order for us to actually grow.
So what's been your most effective channel just for reaching wealth management professionals?
Sure. So, I mean, I think two things that I think are definitely worth calling out. One is becoming an industry incumbent where we're leading. I think that getting, let's say, industry press and getting sort of a spotlight on updates. So like we position ourselves in the front. And so therefore people we know that eventually people will have that problem. They come find us. So that's one. The second one is understanding how the industry is and how people move around, and whether they implemented our system at one place and now they're 5 years later, they've moved to another place, and it's an opportunity to then re-implement our system at another place. And so it's a referral, but also it's building trust and value with the people that are going to be on the buyer side, and knowing that we can help them. I think that definitely helps because they also ask around. If I'm an operations manager at one firm, I would likely call another operations manager at another firm and say, hey, we've got this problem. How did you guys solve it? And that's been powerful for us.
It's hard to beat a good product for, referrals and growth.
It is. It's one of the things that's interesting for like in enterprise sales space is the product has to work and has to be reliable. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best looking or the sharpest. Now we've got a whole new UX thing that we launched last fall, and coming out and delivering in the hands of clients at the end of the first quarter. So that's important. What really is important is, does it actually do the work? Does it actually function? People will take clunky technology, or they'll take even less attractive technology if it's actually solving a problem for them.
Do you find that you need more like professional services in order to get clients onboarded? Is that a large portion of your sales cycle, or is this something more where you find people are able to get started?
That's a really good question and a really important question for us because it's a journey we've been on. So before I arrived, and even shortly after I arrived, professional services and sort of delivery and deployment was a big part of our business. And the hard part about that as a marketer is you have a point where somebody has pain, and then they go through the discovery process, which can be lengthy, and then they go through the sales process, which can be even lengthier. And then on top of that, they have a lengthy delivery process. And it's like the distance between where they had the pain and we decided to do something about it, and where, before they could actually start seeing alleviate it, could be a very long time. And so we've done tremendous amount of work on our end to make that go from year-long delivery time to we're shooting for 30 days. 30 days, I wouldn't say that's not a finished product. It's what we call a launch platform, which means that's the studs of the house that we can put in somebody's hand, and then we can work together to build out from that. And so professional services is something that we actually, if we went down to zero, we have zero professional services, that could be a success for us, because that means that our product is deployable and customizable on the client end and isn't necessarily requiring us to make all the changes.
It's like classics and fundamentals in SaaS. The time to first value is actually really beneficial for both sides.
Yeah, the idea that you build because we're not consultants, right? So if we're getting paid to configure, then we're not getting paid. We're getting paid dollars. We're not getting the right dollars, right? They're not repeatable dollars. They're not necessarily high value dollars. And so having to be honest as a company and look at ourselves with that, because I could get how if we're a early stage, you talk about startups and early stage companies, that's their lifeline, is to have those professional services dollars so they can build up the product. We're we're more mature in a later stage, and I think it's just a different calculus to look forward.
It's a different multiple of a business, and it's not the same enterprise value. So it definitely makes sense. So what's your approach to, content strategy and thought leadership in the space right now?
Sure. So I will give a small plug to a group that we work with called Comma. So we do our outsourced writing. So we meet with them on a monthly basis. We give them topics and things that we would like to have covered. They write a handful of blogs as well as other report for us each month. And we've been working with them for, I think, probably one of their longer term customers, almost 4 years. And what that does is it turns my team, which is small and, lightly resourced, into sort of like the managing editors versus the writer journalist. And I think that is, so we can offer that 10% of expertise because we're in this space and know it, that is missing from an article, missing from a blog piece. And I think that's been helpful us to keep the train running down the tracks, despite, if I have to travel for 2 weeks, or if my team member is out, it's, regardless of what happens, we are able to feed it. And it's also I think we talked about successful strategies, really building out the content it creates nice bait fishing in order to, get somebody to come in and really engage, because I can show you and I can show my bosses that, hey, this prospect downloaded, has reads our newsletter relatively regularly, has downloaded 2 white papers. Well, this last white paper, they came in, they downloaded another white paper, and then a week later they asked for a demo, right? Like I can watch that buyer journey, and it's all digital now, so I can, show them. Now, the challenge with that is, how do I repeat that process, right? So how do I find more people like that? And that's something, like I said, we're on that journey now, really try to figure out and targeting, okay, so this person looks like X, Y, and Z. Can I go find more people who look like X, Y, and Z?
I've seen that in so many industries. The more potential prospect consumes, it's usually a shorter sales cycle. That's really showing their intent and helping them get ready to understand the decision that they're looking to make. And I imagine for a product like yours, it's a big decision, so I could definitely see content helping buyers.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is really important as a marketer, sales team, business leader, is the person who's on the buyer end for us is making a bet. And often they're making a bet with their job, with their livelihood, that we're going to come through and deliver on what they need. And so I try to remind people that we need to be good stewards of what we do, because people are relying on us, right? So if it doesn't work, things can get sideways. And so that leads to us being pretty sticky in terms of having our customers, once the system's implemented, they don't leave. But we can't get lazy or take that for granted, because there's a lot at stake in terms of us being successful.
I mean, people's livelihoods are depending on it, their legacy. Do you think that there's unique challenges that just from trying to target financial advisors and institutions like these that you might not face in other industries?
I mean, I think everybody faces a level of noise. How do you get somebody's attention these days is probably harder than ever. Learning the sequencing and the scheduling and the seasonality of the calendar is important. And having the benefit I have just working my work history is I was licensed myself and sort of know the language to speak. And I think that's true, going past the surface level into truly describing what their needs are, I think has been beneficial for us. But it's also most buyers, they're probably, most financial advisors, especially if they're running their own firm, are wearing 20 different hats at once or at any given time. And so trying to find a way to quickly deliver a message or a note or something to connect their attention that doesn't waste their time, and also, can provide value to them.
You talked a little bit about being an ambassador. How do you balance brand building and demand generation and, going directly for acquiring new users?
That's a daily challenge. I think if you set yourself up right, which is, this definitely sounds like soapbox, but bear with me, is nothing stands on its own, right? So you could have brand building that leads to lead gen, and you could have lead gen that can be repurposed as brand building or, grabbing market share voice. And so trying to find eliminating things that are sort of have single use value, and trying to focus on things that you can use in multiple ways is probably the only way we survive. I'm never going to have enough resources to waste, right? Every resource I have to maximize the output from it.
The physicist in me always wants to be able to, slice it and say, this is from that. And the funny thing in marketing is everybody sees everything across all these channels. It's very hard to know which part, pushed them over to the next stage. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it, because I think that with digital tools, we've kind of lost ourselves in thinking that we can fully attribute everything that happens. And that's not how it works. Even the sequencing, it could have literally been they just happened to hear a song and it reminded them of you. It's just not that way. So we try to look at the big outcomes. Overall, are we having more interested buyers come in? Are they actually qualified and being able to buy something? That's how we really measure ourselves, whether we're being successful.
And do you find that outbound is a viable channel for this sector?
One of the hardest things we do, and I think AI has made it so. Marketers have screwed this up. So email automation, so the marketing tools, before AI, blast everyone's inbox. And now what we've done is let's just do more, because we think AI will write the content. None of that really is going to help anybody or make things easier. So I think outbound is challenging. I think at mass, I think the way to be successful, going back to what I said before, is really understand who you're reaching out to and speaking directly to them. That will connect. Don't talk about hey, I went to University of Texas, like, oh, hook 'em horns and your email. Like, no. Like, but if you said, hey, like, I saw that you were in Las Vegas last week at a event, how, like, tell me how that was. That actually sounds like a human and being authentic and showing interest. I think that's what has worked for us, and I think it probably works for others as well.
And to me, I don't know if I'd love to ask you this question. No one knows what's going to happen with AI, but it seems like a lot is going to happen in the next 10 years. And I have this weird feeling as a marketer that, we're just going to amplify all this noise. And then what? It's going to be all sales, I guess, like very personal, like you described, kind of like business development approach to email. And do you guess that the trend is going this way, that we will have to do more like in person to prove that we are, in fact, human beings that care?
I think that's not wrong. To what degree, I think it may shake out, but I just don't see a world where being authentic, honest, transparent isn't going to be beneficial. Because to your point, the things that are not that are going to be almost at a rapid, more fast pace being dismissed or discarded, right? Like, if something doesn't read authentic to me, like I'm gonna get so fast at like just moving it away because I don't have time to waste.
Well, where do you see the biggest opportunities for growth in wealth management technology in general?
I think regulatory compliance is always going to be somewhere where technology can offer some of its best value to an advisor, which is rules will keep changing, new rules will keep coming, especially on the long term. And so the rules will also get more complex. So how can technology, from a business standpoint, help co-pilot that advisor's business where they can sort of relieve stress or anxiety or even risk from their business? I think that's going to be the last leg standing if everything else falls apart, right? Like that, they'll still need to fulfill their regulatory requirements, and I think that's where, as a business, we see a lot of value.
And unfortunately, it's always changing.
Always changing, and again, it's changing, and the complexity is increasing, right? And so
right.
In the way that, if you know anything about how like the rules and regulations are written, and I'm sure there are other industries are similar, but in financial services, they don't tell you, well, you need to do A, B, C. They say like, well, considering if you were doing A and then thought of doing B, like, so they rely on interpretation. And I think technology can help synthesize and do the interpretation and help guide the advisor.
I'm smiling because, I'm actually a U.S. expat. I've lived all over the world, and sometimes you need to get some advice. And I've had a tax lawyer tell me, well, do you want to take the aggressive stance or like, yeah. What? I know.
Yeah, like there
I don't want to be making this decision.
An answer. It's like, well, like, are you ready for a fight or not? Right.
Well, what marketing initiatives are you the most excited about for the upcoming year?
I think getting in front of people. I still think, like, not even like big trade shows, but just getting on the road and going and networking people. I still think the scars of the pandemic are still there in terms of not getting to be with your friends and be with your professional network. And so that's something that I think is always going to be the important thing for us. And I think this year is something we're looking to invest in quite heavily.
Well, this has been fantastic, Ryan. And before we wrap up, what advice would you give to other B2B marketing leaders if they're in other like complex industries like yours?
Make friends. I think the best marketers mimic other best marketers. So go make friends with other people and watch what they do and share best practices with them. I think that's the easiest, least costly, highest ROI thing a marketing leader can do.
Thanks, Ryan.